Alright, I don't know how to do this and not have it be so painful as I read the notes here. I mean, this is total paraphrase as it is, but God created the world in 6 days, and the seventh day he rested. He made that day holy. They took of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and were cast out of the Garden of Eden. God said that they were more cursed than any, above all animals. Men were to rule over the women, and the men had to sweat to eat. Cain killed Abel and was cast out. There was wickedness in all the land, where every thought and intention was wicked. And then God wanted to blot out the world, but Noah was blameless, and basically was commanded to build an ark and to gather all the animals. And after that, that basically went down in history, down to Nimrod, who was very powerful, who created the Tower of Babel because they were all united. They all spoke the same language, and God said, um, nothing they propose to do will be impossible. So they confuse the language. That's an interesting thing that God would say. Abram, and then it went down to Abram, who was blessed. He was promised a limitless offspring. He was given a covenant of the large Middle East inheritance. And Ishmael was born. Isaac was born. There was a covenant of circumcision. God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac because God was going to provide a sacrifice, but an angel stopped Abraham right before. They were blessed for obedience. Jacob and Esau were brothers. Jacob stole his birthright and received his father's blessing. Jacob fled out of fear because he had deceived him, but then Jacob was promised great offspring. Jacob then served Laban for Rachel, but was given Leah, but then eventually received Rachel and served another 7 years anyway and made Laban great, and he left. And then Jacob was eventually named Israel. Then he had 12 sons eventually. His favorite was Joseph, and the brothers did not like Joseph. Joseph was sold to Egypt, and then when he was there, Joseph fled from Potiphar's wife and was sent to prison. Came out of prison to interpret a dream of 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. He was very successful with the Pharaoh. Joseph eventually forgave his brothers, and he reunited with his family. And Joseph traded grain for all the livestock, money, and land in Egypt for Pharaoh, which I thought was very interesting. Israel finally settled in Egypt, and Israel, or Jacob, blessed each individual son or tribe at the time. That was pretty interesting. That was chapter 49, I believe. And then Joseph promised God would visit his brothers in Egypt. This is total paraphrase, way more detail. I mean, I was paraphrasing like crazy, and I could only read a little bit to even get in this 5 minutes. But those are definitely the highlights. Very old school, very Old Testament, Old Covenant, I guess is what it's about. But as just from a skeptic, wow, this is just the book. This is not anything spiritual going on or anything. At this point, I just heard that the book was good and I should read it. Really, I was told to read the New Testament first so I'd understand the grace stuff and all this. I've read it all, but starting from square one, I could see why a lot of people don't read the Bible, because it is very intimidating and confusing, and all the generational stuff, it's just kind of blah. But it's historical as well, so you gotta kind of plow through it. I did it in 3 hours. I used the English Standard Version, and Exodus is next. Let's see what happens.